With the high poly done, now is a good time to think about a base colour scheme, as we'll need this to set the sizes of our bevels within the Bevel shader. I always really enjoy this part as it's the first point at which I think you can really see what the final asset will look like, save for wear and tear and decals of course. You've probably seen me do this a dozen times before. We'll split the view, rendered on one side and shader editor on the other. It doesn't matter which part of the model you start with, but I usually start with the largest. Select it and add a new material. This will add a principled BSDF node. Next we're going to add in an Ambient Occlusion, Color Ramp and Mix RGB node set to multiply with a factor of 1. These nodes may be different in later versions of Blender. I'm using 3.3.1. Connect these all together into the base color, and we can now use the Color Ramp to increase or decrease the AO for individual parts. And color 2 in the Mix RGB slot will be our base color. Lastly, we need to add in a Bevel shader node into the normal slot, put the samples up to 16, and this will control how beveled our edges look. For the base, we want them to be quite chunky, so I'm going to make a procedural stone for the base later on, so its colour doesn't really matter for the moment. We can name the material to help us identify it, name it by part, colour, or even bevel size, large, medium, or small if you want to. I use a free add-on called Material Utilities, which I spoke about in my recent add-ons video, and I use this to quickly add materials to different parts of the model. Note, when you use a material on more than one object, you'll get a number next to its name to indicate that it's one material shared between two objects. Any change to the material will affect both. We don't want that, we just want to copy the AO and bevel setup, so we can click the number to make it its own material and rename it. Then adjust the AO and bevel size as needed. You can now go through and give materials to all the parts of your model, adjusting the bevel sizes, AO, metal and roughness values, and the base colour. You can make up your own colour schemes or apply some colour theory. If you don't know colour theory, there is a useful website called canva.com. If you search Google for colour wheel, it's the top result. It has an interactive colour picker that lets you select a range of colour palettes that work well together. It's well worth learning about for improving your work overall. For most pieces, I tend to go with a primary, secondary and accent colour technique, as I find this works well for large, medium and small details. If you want to, you can even duplicate your model and come up with multiple variations. We'll be revisiting our high poly's colours later to bake a colour ID map for use in setting up masks, so we can procedurally texture any part of the model we want to, before the final bake into PBR. In the next video, we'll be making the low poly ready to unwrap. I'll see you then.